Energy and persistence conquer all things. Benjamin Franklin. My friends, as we end this week, we have everything on our chart is bullish except for 20-year U.S. government bonds. And here's the order of bullishness, starting with the strongest. That is HODL, Bitcoin, our Bitcoin ETF. That is the number one most bullish, followed by the S&P 500, then the NASDAQ 100, and then gold. The only thing that is bearish, and it's just a little more than a coin toss, is 20-year U.S. government bonds. But again, as I told you, as we watched things, we have seen things move over and go down. So I am maybe more bullish than our math would call for. Bearish than our math would call for after 4 weeks of bullishness. As we watched again, we only had average volume one of those weeks. That was a week before last, the week beginning the 23rd of June. But then we broke the line completely in what we typically see with a weekly vertical crossover. And it is a little spinning top. There is a bit of an up move on the top. There's a bit of a wick, but again, broke clearly through, decently below. And again, I believe we're going to see more bearishness as we move along. So let's move away from bonds. We'll get back to that in just a minute. We'll start, as we always do, with the S&P 500. Now, the S&P 500 last week, as I've gone over multiple times, or rather the week beginning the 30th, because I know at the end of the week it gets confusing depending on when you listen to this over the weekend. The week beginning 30th of June, we had a high of 626.28. This week a high of 626.87. So we were up roughly 50 cents on the week, but we did hit a higher high, even though a smaller candle. We got right there at average volume. The 2-day we can see it's a spinning. Well, it's not even a spinning top. It's just a smaller candle. It's sitting right there on that weekly trend line. That is the Thursday, Friday. And you can see where literally we've just been sliding sideways, barely moving a little bit higher for many, many days now, virtually 2 weeks. But again, did move up a little bit, do have the volume there. Now, could we be peaking? That is possible. We were down for the day, 0.35%. So we are still bullish on the S&P, but we're looking more and more cautious as we sit right there on the trend line on the 2-day chart and the half-day chart. We'll see how this next week starts. If it starts like TLT, 20-year U.S. government bonds did, where things drop below, then of course we may see a top. I mean, we have them occasionally. 3 weeks back in July of last year, 5 weeks back in mid-December, and then, of course, starting in February, late February, all the way through the beginning of April, we had a nice downturn that we played quite well. Then 2 weeks of sort of dead moves, and then this latest gain up. So we've been long for a long time. We'll continue to watch and see what goes up. Does come down. It just is a skill to determine when that's happening. Let's go to the NASDAQ 100. It pulled back some today, also 0.23%, but again, still bullish, sitting right there on the 2-day chart, sitting right there on the weekly trend line. And you can see the same thing on the half-day chart. Weekly just below the average volume. And again, last week was below average volume too. We have to go back to the week beginning the 23rd of June till we had average or above volume. So we'll see what's happening with the Qs. The prior week's high, 557.20. This week, 557.63. So again, technically going a little higher, but pretty much a sideways slide. So we'll keep an eye on the NASDAQ and the S&P 500 and see if we are just pausing. Again, we've had some nice up moves over the last many weeks. They could just be pausing like we've seen happen before and sort of absorbing, digesting those gains and then getting ready to move up again. we'll be ready and watching. Let's look at what's up with bonds. I've talked about it a lot. We've gone into 6 days of the down movement, punching through the weekly trend line back on Thursday the 3rd, that and then the following Monday, because of course markets were closed on the 4th of July, and things have clearly popped through. Today, down pretty strong. I mean, 1.38%. I've been telling you to watch all week what's going on here, because when you clearly have such a hard break in the weekly trend line, it means a lot of things have happened. And of course, we had average volume adding to that. And as we look at, you can see there is a little bit of a wick on top, but we are clearly a strong down on the week for 20-year U.S. government bonds. And those of you who aren't familiar with us, you might say, well, why would I be wanting to get into a trade? Well, it's not on the bonds themselves. It's potentially on the inverse fund that you might consider practice trading. And I've shown it a few times this week. TBF, that's one of the short funds that it's the pro shares managed by them, short of U.S. Treasury. Single short, and again, it's done us well in the past. Something for you to potentially practice trade as we move forward through time. That's where we are on bonds. Let's look at gold. Gold up for the day, almost 1%. And again, that is our least bullish of the 4 bullish ETFs that we've talked about. But again, gold peaking back on the week beginning the 9th of June and then sort of slowing down sideways and mostly down, probably more sideways than anything. This week a doji, a green spinning top. It is above the weekly trend line. That's not much of a trend line, I agree. But it did pop up through it nicely on Friday. So again, leaves us a little bullish. But not anything I'm going to be pulling a trigger on till I see some real clarity there. Let's look at where we are on where we are on Bitcoin. Bitcoin up for the day 4.14%. Boy, has Bitcoin been on a move. We saw, again, sort of digested some gains going into July, popped up on the 2nd into the 3rd, rolled down a little on the 8th and the 9th, and then starting on into the 9th, and then starting on the 9th, really started building and a booming today. Yesterday was nice too, but again, reaching higher highs and just going up. Now, let's look at the 24-hour-a-day Bitcoin chart, see where the high is. As we look at Bitcoin here, we can see that the high so far 118,839. That is beautiful. And again, we've been calling that bullishness in Bitcoin for let me look here, for a few days now. And it's been increasing in its bullishness this week. So again, good to see. I was expecting more of a rollback, honestly, although we saw a small rollback back in December going into January, and then things at the end of January really rolled over strong down into April, and then this latest climb started in mid-April and sort of ended there in mid-May as sideways, and over the last 2 weeks sort of ginning up. That is where we are, my friends, as we end the day. On Friday, we always love to hear from you. cw@chartingwealth.com. Patreon members, we have already sent you out via email and loaded on the Patreon site our July 14, 2025 5+ day ETF trading analysis and execution plan for our 5 ETFs, S&P 500, NASDAQ 100, 20-year bonds, gold, and the Bitcoin ETF. And of course, it includes, as always, the analysis and predictions, along with the trade execution summary grid and the trade execution instructions. Hope you are making good use of those. And again, super helpful information. Breaks everything down to the trend, the price action, the prediction, the exit point, entry point, expected move and back test accuracy, particularly focusing in on historic moves on the Heikin-Ashi candlesticks with similar volume increases, those types of things. Thanks, my friends. God bless. Have a great weekend from Charting Wealth.